So, the Muppets are an allegory for being queer. Let me explain. Before I fully explain what I mean by the Muppets being an allegory, there's two things I need to explain first. First and foremost, I'm largely going to reference the 2011 Muppets movie where brothers Walter and Gary go to LA with Gary's girlfriend Mary, and while there they go on a tour of the Muppet studio, which is in visible disrepair. While here, Walter overhears a conversation with Tex Richmond, a rich oil baron who intends to tear down the studio for oil. With the help of Gary and Mary, the trio seek out Kermit to inform him of Richmond's evil intentions and to get the Muppets back together to stop him. Once all reunited, the Muppets put on a 2-hour telethon special where they attempt to raise $10 million to buy the studio back. Ultimately, the Muppets are unsuccessful. However, Kermit assures everyone that it wasn't all for nothing. He reminds everyone that they're back together again, and they're family, and they're not going to lose each other as easily as they did last time. Now, this is at the end of the movie. Everyone sings a song, and life is good. In the credits, Richmond suffers from a head injury, and he just gives the studio back to the Muppets. This is a brilliant movie. It's one of my favorites. Secondly, I need to discuss queer theory in film and how heterosexuality is not born, but rather created or even programmed. In Jack Halberstam's book, The Queer Art of Failure, Halberstam says that childhood is an essentially queer experience in a society that acknowledges through its extensive training programs for children that heterosexuality is not born, but rather made. Not only this, but animated films, and I would argue some live-action movies directed at kids, have a way of making children feel seen as the rebellious underdog who just needs to escape the confinements and limitations that are their parents and likely school. Halberstam talks about nature documentaries and how they have a way of projecting human ideals onto non-human entities. In The March of the Penguins, the narrator frames the penguin's reproductive cycle in a way that is comparable to the average heterosexual family unit. But this couldn't be further from the truth. I'm not gonna explain what the actual reproductive cycle is because I just don't have time. You can look it up after you watch this video though. Now, okay, here's the actually important part. How do these two things connect? Well, we're gonna largely focus on the character of Walter and how he interacts with the world around him. Walter and Gary grow up incredibly close with each other, and when they're younger, they don't really notice or care about how they're different from each other in any way. But as the movie shows them growing up, you can tell that Walter's aware that there's something different about him. As a queer person who regularly turns to this movie for comfort, I see a lot of myself in Walter. Having this unspoken understanding that for one reason or another, I'm different from my peers, and they can sense it too. As I kept watching this movie through the perspective of a queer lens, I just kept finding more and more similarities between myself and Walter. For example, the scene of Walter dressing up as Kermit for Halloween and showing his costume to the people he considered friends, only for them to laugh in his face, was a violently familiar feeling. This devastation that no matter how hard you try, no matter what you do, you're different and other people can tell. But, flashing forward a bit, this changes when Walter convinces Kermit to get the Muppets back together again. Once everyone is reunited, Walter immediately feels at home and has this sense of community that a majority of non-Muppets are just provided and offered. It's not a question. Almost any queer person can vouch that once they connected with other queer people and created a sense of community and family for themselves, it changed their whole worldview. Connecting with others in a way that you never thought you were capable of, and realizing it was never you that was the issue or the problem. It was everyone else. This whole feeling of found family and community is so validating and important, and I think the Muppets does a beautiful job of displaying how found family is sometimes just as, if not more important than born family. Of course, getting back into it, we can't talk about the 2011 Muppet movie without addressing the beautiful, iconic, award-winning performance of Am I a Man or Am I a Muppet? This is also the catalyst of Walter accepting himself for who he is and respecting the fact that he can't change the way he is. The entirety of Walter's verse surrounds him not recognizing the person. Okay, I don't know whether to use person or Muppet here, take your pick, that he's become, and how he recognizes that he can't keep pretending to be something he's not for any longer. Through this, he accepts that he is a Muppet and that it's not something he needs to keep running away from. He has the other Muppets to support him now, and he's not alone in his identity. Solidifying this, Gary tells Walter at the end of the movie, "You always believe in other people, but that's easy. Sooner or later, you gotta believe in yourself too, because that's what growing up is. It's becoming who you want to be. You have to try." The Muppets 2011 movie is a great example of queerness in film without being explicitly queer. Walter's entire character arc of feeling like the odd one out in his hometown, and even feeling a disconnect with his brother for something he can't identify at the beginning of the film, into him finding a community with others that feel the same way he did, and have that shared life experience, is so inherently queer, it's almost